Happy Thursday, everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. Another week has passed since last Thursday, and tonight I wanted to discuss a topic that relates to pain. Jasper, are we live?
Waiting on it.
Not quite sure.
It's okay. We're hanging out.
We're hanging out.
Still says live, no timer. It's okay. Oh, I got the notification.
Okay, looks
And
there we are.
one viewer.
Okay,
yeah,
all right, we're on.
That's a good
Sorry,
sign.
we had a little problem there. So anyway, everyone, hi everybody, and I want to discuss tonight about pain. But before I get into this, so my website's up, my new website. Anybody who wants to schedule an appointment with me, my available calendar is right online. Secondly, anybody that wants to join a group, all the groups are filled. There's going to be new dates going up this week. And you can go right on, book your seat right there without having Phil touching any of these emails, and you can purchase your seat, and that way everything's settled. So now that we got business out of the way, let me just talk about this topic. So I did not discuss this topic in light of everything that's been going on in the media. I've been wanting to discuss this topic for a while. It just happens that I chose tonight to do this. So what I've learned about pain. And many of us think that if somebody's in pain, they have a broken leg or a cast on their arm or they're hunched over. And I've learned and discovered that there's another source of pain. And that pain is the things that people are hiding and masking because they have to get through the day. The pain of losing a loved one, the pain of losing a job, the pain of losing a relationship. All of these things, but we have to put on a mask. And sometimes when we put on that mask, we forget to take it off. So, as I've mentioned to you all before, I don't talk about topics unless I have gone through them personally myself. And here's how I want to let you know how this kind of plays out. So long before I came to Earth, I decided my contract in coming here to Earth. And that contract was going to be that this was the family that I was going to be born into. This was the location I was going to be born into. And these were the series of events, part of my contractual agreement that I would have to address. So I'm born the youngest of all the boys. I grew up in Northern Ireland, Belfast. So I came here when I was 13. So my very formative years were developed in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland was war-torn, is war-torn at the time. So, and I grew up in a very chaotic household. Anyway, that was part of my path. Along the ways comes, my gift is starting to develop. So I'm trying to hide that from people. So, because I don't want anyone to know. Because in Ireland, back in the day, you just go away to the loony bin. End of story. There's no questions. Where's Phil? Phil's gone. We don't talk about it and see you all later. So what happens is, over time, I started to notice that people will come into this office and they seemingly look perfectly fine. They're happy. They give me a hug. But behind that mask, there's tremendous grief. There's tremendous pain. And one of the things that I've learned is there's no way for you to really share your pain with another individual if they haven't experienced it. So you can empathize, you can sympathize, but if you haven't gone through a similar painful experience, then the individual can't truly know what you're going through. So people go through divorces all the time. I can empathize, but I've never been through a divorce. People have lost spouses, again, haven't lost. But for me, personally speaking, I want to talk about what I call the pit and how we get to the pit. So long ago, when Phil was younger, my first moment in my life, I could recall at 7 years old, having a wave of what I now know to be depression. Now, everybody asks me, they say to me, Phil, I would love to have your gift. I would love to have your job. I would love to have these things. But understand that all things that we get, all gifts, come with some sort of downside. And for me, this downside was how to manage voices and how to manage all of these people coming through. And again, you're not endowed with a gift. You grow into this over time. But as I was growing and I was evolving, I was starting to discover there was just something about me that I couldn't pinpoint, but I didn't feel right. I had a job, I had a girlfriend. Believe it or not, I had a girlfriend back in the day, guys, for 7 years. And God love her. And but I was hiding who I was. I was masking who I was. I hadn't come out. I think if anybody that knows, Ellen DeGeneres had gotten kicked off of her show back in the 90s for coming out as being gay. So I wasn't about to, although I was out, it wasn't very popular and blah, blah, blah. But all of that set aside, and people can pinpoint that it was your gift or it was this, there was just something in me that was dark. And what I mean by that is I would have waves of chemical depression come over me out of nowhere. I could be sitting outside in the beach and I would have this massive wave come over me. And it started when I was younger, and I learned to set it aside. And then as I go through puberty, it starts happening more and more. So what happened was I realized that when I started working with my guide, his name is Isaac, I said, Isaac, what is going on here? Because I feel fine, and then there's moments where I just feel absolutely terrible, and there's no reason why I should feel terrible. And the spiritual advice was, Phil, you're still in a human body. You have to take care of this human vessel. Meaning that I came into Earth with were specific limitations that I knew I was going to have to conquer and or address at some point in my life. So my journey began, in order to get to the bottom of all of this, was I personally went to therapy. And when I went to therapy, it wasn't that I was going to look for somebody to tell me how to live my life. I knew the tools that I had in my life were not working. They simply were not helping me get through the day. So a therapist was teaching me how to get new tools and how to deal with life on life's terms and the stresses that come along with that. So people have situational depression. They lose somebody and they go into a depression and they don't, they just feel low. Other people have severe depressions and they haven't lost anybody, and it comes into this. But what I want to tell you all is that at some point in our life, we have to consider ourselves more important than the next person, and we have to tell someone how we feel. Now, I have no trouble speaking up how I feel, but when I was in the pit, I didn't tell anybody how I felt. I didn't tell anyone that I felt depressed. I didn't tell anybody I felt dark. I didn't tell anybody that I couldn't see tomorrow. And what I mean by that is the only thing that I felt was the psychological pain that I was in on a daily basis, going way back into my 20s. So what I decided to do was to continue to try every method that I knew in order to try and break this cycle. Yoga, I didn't do yoga. Gym, walking, I got a dog. I did all of these very positive things in order to try and help me just get through it. And this wasn't a daily thing for me, but when it did come, it came heavy and it came hard. So I tried all of these things and I wasn't getting the results that I was looking for, because here I am, I still have to do my job, but when I go home at night, I would have this, again, wave of darkness coming over me. The reason why I'm sharing this with you all tonight is not because, in light of what everything took in place in the media, suicide is nothing new in this office. People die all the time from either self-inflicted and or other causes. But what I can tell you is the soul crosses over to the other side no matter what. But before I get into any of those questions, I want to tell you how I proceeded ahead with this journey. The last thing that I wanted was a label. I'm Irish, right? Like, we don't do labels. It's not something that's done. We avoid them at all costs. But I knew there was something not right with me. And as I went through therapy and all the other things that didn't work, I then had to reach out for other help in the form of a psychiatrist when I was younger. So I was dealing with being a medium. I was dealing with being gay. I was dealing about breaking up with a relationship with a woman that I was in for 6 or 7 years. I was dealing with all of these things. And no matter what, and no matter how many people I had around me, and no matter how much love I had around me, I couldn't shake this. It just couldn't be I just could not get rid of this sensation of feeling absolutely depths of the pit. So for me, and what I chose to do is, and why I want to talk about this freely, is I went on medication because it was the only thing that was going to break my situation. Before I went on medication, I think I've mentioned this before, I discovered a little thing called alcohol. And alcohol is a perfect tool for numbing your feelings, particularly if you are suffering depression, particularly if you're not feeling good about yourself, particularly if you have an anxiety disorder or whatever it may have been. And it was a perfect tool. My first drink roughly was around 23. I was alcoholic at 24. I mean, I drank myself alcoholically within a year, and then I was sober at 27. So alcohol was my was my tool for getting through life, but it was also my greatest destruction. I know I'm throwing a whole lot on you here because I come on here every Thursday. I'm smiling. Anybody that knows me knows I had a great life. But I asked Isaac once, why? Why do I have to go through all of this? Why do I have to suffer through all of this? And his answer was, Phil, if you hadn't experienced this, if you hadn't gone through these depressive episodes, if you hadn't gone through addiction, alcohol and drugs, you would never be able to help the people that you were able to help. You would never be able to help them understand why their child did X, why their significant other took their life, or whatever the situation may be. And I can tell you that every soul that I have met who's crossed over from the other side, that either ends their life accidentally or ends their life intentionally via suicide, so has told me never in their moment of them wanting to pass did they think of the family that was around them, because their pain was so severe that all they could feel on a daily basis was, I don't want to be here. I can't get out of this psychological pain. It's one of the reasons why people cut physical pain, releases endorphins in the brain to takes away from psychological pain. I'm not saying it's a recommendation, but it's one of the things that what people do. So this is, again, my story. This is not medical advice or anything else. This is what happened to Phil and how I got here. So as Isaac tells me this, that I had to go through this, I took my mental health very, very seriously, because I knew I had to stay grounded. I don't have the luxury of just, laying in bed all day, and it's just not my nature. But what I learned to do was tell people that I love and who I was close with that I don't feel great, that I don't feel blank. Like this new website's just been a nightmare, but I have to update my picture. I figure you all know what I look like by now. But I was supposed to do it the other day, and I said, listen, I can't. I'm stressed out. I'm doing endless readings. I can't sit down for a photo shoot right now, so I have to put it on hold. So I've learned through time what I can do and what I can't do. I've learned to push. I've learned to fight through it. I've learned never to give in to it. But the biggest thing that I learned was I reached out for help. I reached out for help for people that were not part of my circle, that people weren't going to tell me, oh, Phil, it's going to be okay, or it's going to pass, because I knew it wasn't going to pass. I knew it was getting worse. So I reached out for medical help. Now, a lot of people don't have... A lot of people can just have a bout of depression. They lost a job, or some people who lose their children go into situational depression. For me, I have a chemical depression, meaning that no matter what the situation is, it's just there. It comes and goes whenever it sees fit. I can normally predict when it's going to happen, but a lot of people are shocked when I tell them, I too suffer. And they're like, no, that's not possible, because you have the other side, you're connected. What could you possibly have to be depressed about? And again, I'm in a physical shell. The soul and the physical body are two entirely different things. So we come here for our journey. I had to overcome things. I had to address things. I could have chose not to get sober. I could have chose not to put down drugs. I could have chose not to address my depression, and I would be dead. And it's just that simple, because I knew where this was heading. So over the years, and all the people that have come in here, and I work with a lot of kids who struggle with depression, drugs, so on and so forth, I can only give them the tools that I learned throughout the years that worked for me that possibly could work for somebody else. But I don't want people thinking that you're coming into this office and I have not suffered either. I very much have. I just have dealt with it in a different way. And what I mean by that is I've dealt with it and addressed it so that it doesn't dominate my life on a daily basis. I know I'm throwing a lot on you here because we talk about spirituality, but one of the biggest questions I get is, Phil, if someone takes their life, what happens to them? Their soul passes to the other side. Long before there was religion, people, there was mental illness in this world. We do not like to discuss mental illness in the United States. We certainly didn't discuss it in Ireland, but it's like a big no-no. And I've noticed that people would rather say that their kid is a drug addict or an alcoholic before they would say their kid has a mental illness. Like, it's almost cooler to say that than to address the actual fact. How I operate is Isaac or the other side gives me the facts. And with those facts, I present to you, and we deal with what it is. Here's what we have. This is what we're dealing with. And here's what you're working with, meaning that these are the tools you have. And can these tools build this house? Because if they can't, then we're going to replace these tools for something new. So That's the life guide part of my industry, my business. And it's a term that a good friend of mine coined for me a long time ago, because the other side comes through and they let you know more than just that they're okay. They see the path that you're on. They see that you're struggling and you're in grief. They see the things that you're going through with your kids. So what they do is they tell me, Phil, if we continue on this path, this is the end result. If we alter this, this is going to be the end result. Meaning that the other side's job is to get you down your path as smoothly as possible. It does not need to be difficult. It does not need to be hard. So that's kind of my story where I'm at. I know when to take mental health days. I know when to not come into the office, meaning that I'm like, okay, I've worked too much. I need to give my brain a rest. I've learned over time how to manage myself. But for people that are suffering and are afraid to get help or afraid to call out and say something's wrong with me, don't be. Speak up. Speak up and tell somebody why it's a friend, why it's another parent, why it's your sibling, or whoever it may be. But don't be afraid to share your feelings, and that's using the throat chakra. I know it's easier said than done, but a lot of the times is the moment you talk about something, it no longer has power over you. It no longer is severe. It no longer controls or dictates your life. And I'm telling you, I've had some of the most amazing moments over a cup of coffee with a friend, meaning that I have learned so much about myself, and it's simply just letting it go back and forth. And for people that are opposed to therapy, I totally respect that and understand that. It's not for everybody. For people that are opposed to medicine, I completely understand that. Simply not everybody needs it. This guy does. That I know, because I've tried it the hard way and I've gone the other way. Neither way is easy. Medicine does not cure everything. It's just a stepping stone to help you get back on your path. But when we talk about people who are suicide, I have clients that have gone out, smoked a joint at a party that's laced with whatever, and come home and killed themselves because they've gone into psychosis. Meaning that they were never suicidal before, but they were thrown into these things. So it's a very difficult topic, because everybody asks me why. Why did the person do that? And every single person that I have met that has taken their life and or died of depression, I've met people that have ate themselves to death, drank themselves to death, all many forms where they've ended their lives because of these various situations. They've all told me that, Phil, before I did this, the only thing that I could think of was the constant pain that I'm in. And one of the things that they also tell me is every single breath that I took was exhausting. And that's heartbreaking for me, because a lot of people don't even know that that person's suffering. But because I've gone through this, Phil has a great eyeball for picking up if somebody's suffering or not. It's just part of the way my gift is. So the way my gift works is, if I'm with you, if you're hiding something, it's activated. And the moment that it's activated, Phil's on the go. And I don't mean to do that. Hi, Kathy. I don't mean to do that, but it's just the way it happens. If I see that you're in harm's way, if I see that you're harming yourself, if I see that you're in danger to yourself, I will intervene. End of story. It's just the way it's going to be. So while you like it or not, I would rather have somebody mad at me for intervening in their personal life than having somebody upset with me because they lost their significant other. So this is a broad topic, and I'm going to open it up to you guys, but I want to give you some history just about me, that I didn't walk into Earth, come through a family, and boom, I was a medium. There was a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD growing up in Northern Ireland. I still have friends there now who are dealing with it. Like, I was on the Catholic side, so this is where all the war was. That's a whole nother chapter. Anyway, I see a hand. Go ahead, Jasper.
What do you do when you can't get a friend or family member to talk about their pain?
So if you have a friend or a family member that does not want to talk about their pain, then one of the things that I say to them is, if they can't talk about it, then write it. Perhaps you can put it in a letter. Perhaps you can put it in an email. Perhaps you can put it in a text message. Some people don't do well face to face, because when you're in the pit, you do not believe help exists. You do not believe that something can happen. You don't believe that you can feel better. But remember, the pit is a temporary place. You don't stay there. But for the person, they believe that they're in it day in and day out. So I always tell people that if you're troubled, if you have trouble speaking up, reach out to somebody you feel safe with. Reach out to a teacher. Reach out to a friend. Reach out to a parent or another person's parent, and get it off your chest, no matter what the circumstances are. So it doesn't have to just be where you feel you're depressed. It can be many other things that are happening. Go ahead, Jasper.
Shannon says, you picked it up, excuse me, you picked it up on me within minutes. I've sought counseling, and I love it.
Yay! Counseling is a fabulous thing because, again, it helps us have the tools that we need in order to get through life and the stresses that life has. It's a really beautiful thing. I mean, you're going into another party who doesn't know you, and there's no judgment, so it's very helpful. Go ahead, Jasper.
I'm afraid to open up to anyone about my pain. It makes me feel very vulnerable.
Yeah, so opening up about our pain makes us feel extremely vulnerable because who wants to be labeled crazy, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. If you hear somebody's got depression, if you hear somebody's got a mental illness, you automatically, the stigma is they are crazy. The only difference between me and you is my brain sees and operates things differently. I'm extremely dyslexic, like people don't know. I barely read anything, although I do read books. I have, like, my brain processes things. So if I sat in a classroom, Phil's done. But if you show me, I'm going to retain. I'm an extremely visual learner. So I had to learn that when I went through school. I was in high school and completely a mess because I wasn't learning properly. So there's many bumps that go through this here, but I know I'm on a tangent, but I want to discuss this because I want you all to know that no matter how bad something is, no matter how bad it is, and I have seen some bad stuff in my day, no matter how bad it is, don't be afraid to reach out. Do not be afraid to reach out to your friends or family because I guarantee you when you talk to another person, it's not that bad. Go ahead, Jasper.
It's hard to have sympathy when someone refuses to talk about it.
Yes.
Should I keep trying or should I walk away?
So when someone is not ready to talk about what's going on and what's happened with them, your best bet is to back up. You never want to force somebody to try and talk about something. You can tell them, I'm here for you, I'm available, and I can talk. I'm willing to listen. See, sometimes some people just want to vent, and they don't want any feedback. So I have friends like that. I'm like, go, 15 minutes, you go on a bitch fest. And then after that, we're done. And sometimes people just need to get it out and say, okay, and now that they got it out, then they can look at things rationally. So, but when it's just you, and our heads are dangerous neighborhoods. When it's just you and you're there alone, that's not a place where you want to be. That's not somewhere you want to be alone. So that's why it's essential that you raise your hand and say, hey, I don't feel great. No one's going to ship you off to the psych ward. What they're going to do is, what do you need help with? What are you not feeling good with? What do you want to talk with? Whatever it may be. Go ahead, Jasper.
I want to be supportive, but I don't want to be the shrink. Is there a good way to encourage someone to get professional help?
So I want to be supportive and I don't want to be the shrink. There's a great way to get people to get professional help. We make recommendations. We look through their insurance. We try to help them and say if they want to do this here. And again, most people meet with a therapist, and then if they need to meet with a psychiatrist, then so be it. But one of the things about it is we offer people, here's the door. I can't make you walk through it, but I can bring it to you. There's other people, and I'm telling you right now, I've watched family members do everything, keep an eye on the individual 24/7. They go to the bathroom and the individual's life is over. Meaning that we can't keep someone alive either. What is Monica saying, Jasper?
Monica says, I've been in major depression, hospitalized 3 times, but now I'm in constant physical pain. I've had every test on earth. I'm healthy. Any ideas?
So, Monica, it's interesting because physical pain I now have a new understanding for. I never really believed that there's such a thing as physical pain, meaning that someone could be in constant pain, until I've had to deal with this situation with my mother. So my mother, as I said before, has permanent shingles, she has cervical dystonia, she's an autoimmune disease, but she's also completely opioid resistant. Her body does not recognize any opioids at all. So she is in horrific pain. I've also watched that throw her into a depression. So part of depression can create physical pain. So there may not be actually something wrong with you, but it's just the depression that's creating physical pain. So sometimes people are looking for another situation, but it's the major depression that's causing that. Go ahead, Jasper.
Corrine says, until you take responsibility for your depression instead of blaming others, you'll never start the healing process.
Yeah, so, and the other thing is too, is taking responsibility for your depression can be a scary thing because we don't want to be the ones to say, I I caused, or I am part of, or I'm flawed, or this happens to me. Listen, there's nobody, not your neighbor, not your friends, not your family members. There is nobody out there that hasn't gone through some sort of difficult situation. So it's just a matter of, remember the rules: relate, don't compare. So just because they're not similar doesn't mean that we can't understand them. And I will tell you this here: one of the things that I've learned from the other side is compassion costs nothing. It really, really costs nothing. So to be compassionate from somebody else. But then we have people that just simply want to talk about the same situation over and over and over again and then not get help. And that's where you have to extract yourself and say, listen, this is now unhealthy for me. Because you can live with somebody who has mental illness, depression, severe pain, and start taking it on yourself. So meaning that you start picking up the vibes that the other person's living with, and you get confused about, are these my feelings or their feelings? Go ahead, Jasper.
Hi, Linda. Sorry, I didn't mean to skip you. Linda says, sometimes there is no one you can talk to, and other times you don't want to let anyone know about your problems. Do you believe in all the medications they prescribe today?
Do I believe in all the medications that they prescribe today? Here's what I'll tell you is, I have watched people go through horrendous circumstances, and without those medications, they simply would never have survived. So, yes, every time you put something in, you give something up. There's no doubt about this. But what I'll tell you is, in 2018, we do not need to mentally suffer. End of story. We don't have to go through this. We have made such advancements in our mental health that we believe 10 years from now we'll treat mental health through diet and through our gut. But we don't need to. People are afraid of getting hooked on medications and things like that. But only 10% of medications work for people. So often you have to go through several to find the one that works for you. So don't be afraid to try it. But I will tell you that the outcome is better than what you're experiencing. And if you are to go on a medication, you're working under the care of a doctor or a psychiatrist. Most people go to their general practitioner to get medication. They don't go to see a psychiatrist. It's when you have a major depressive disorder we work with psychiatrists. Go ahead, Jasper.
Marie says, my depression is, I suppose, situational. Mm-hmm. The death of my beloved husband being the worst.
Yes.
Now I'm in the darkness again. Relationship that I just ended is very hard on me. First real relationship since my husband has passed. I'm having real struggle finding my strength again. It is grief as well. I can't seem to reach out to anyone. I just want to shut myself off from everyone.
Right, so here's the situation. When you lose your husband, and particularly the way that you lost your husband, and then you enter into a new relationship years later, and that relationship ends, what happens is it re-triggers the trauma. It's like losing your husband all over again, and that's what sinks us back into the depression. My niece, she's 18, her boyfriend's the same age. His brother, who's only a couple of years older than him in Ireland, died from, what is it, cystic fibrosis, niece? Mm-hmm. Cystic fibrosis, unexpectedly. We knew he had it, blah, blah, blah. So she was texting me the other day, and she said, Phil, Johnny's not the same. And I said, Katie, Johnny will never be the same. He lost his best friend. He lost his brother. He lost the man that he was going to be his best man for. He's never going to be the same. His life has changed. He will learn to deal with the pain later on, but his life has changed. So what happens is each time that we have a loss, it can re-trigger the major loss that we have gone through. And that loss will then re-trigger those emotions, and we can go back into that depression. So it's very important that we try to keep ourselves aware that I don't want to go down, I don't want to sink down, I don't want to go this low. But it's also very, very easy to give up. It's easy to hide under the covers. I would love to hide under the covers. I'm not a sleeper. That's the one thing I wish I could do. Jasper can be out like that, but I'm not a sleeper. So, but I hope that answers your questions. Go ahead, Jasper.
Kind of trailing into that, Beth asks, how does one open the throat chakra?
So opening the throat chakra, and Beth, if you go back on some of our previous videos and we talked about the throat chakra, the purpose of the throat chakra is helping you speak your truth. If you don't feel good, speak your truth. If you feel good, speak your truth. If you feel happy, say what you have to say. If you feel unhappy, say what you have to say. So it's forcing yourself to say it even though your body doesn't say it. Because anybody that's gone through depression, what's the voice tell you? And I hate to say voices, but what does the voice tell you? Don't talk about it. Don't let anybody know. It's weakness. And depending on what heritage you grew up with or nationality you grew up. Oh, we don't talk about that. Oh, this will pass. In Ireland, the nerves are called the worry, and it just got the nerves, they'll pass. The nerves will pass. No, the nerves don't pass. The nerves get worse. So, but again, these were old stigmas that we grew up with and things like that. So the spiritual solution that I have discovered, and I'm going to end with this, and I know this is very heavy and it was personal tonight for me, but I wanted you all to know mostly that I have gone through situations and circumstances, and you're not alone in this. But the biggest thing that I've learned from the other side is speak up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There are people out there, friends, family, and medical people that will help you. But don't be afraid to ask for help. There is no harm, there is no shame in raising your hand and saying, I need help. One of the hardest things that I ever did was say that I need help because my pride and ego did not want me to do it. So for anybody out there that's struggling, for anybody out there that you notice or you may suspect is having trouble with their situation or what's going on, it's simply ask them, is there anything I can do to help you? Do you want to talk? Do you want to grab a cup of coffee? Do you want to go for a walk in the park? Do you want to take the dogs out? And sometimes that person just simply needs to vent and we can change their whole lives. I hope this helps somebody out there tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. I know I didn't get to answer a lot of your questions, but I did want to discuss this topic because it's not new, but it happens constantly. And the most important thing is, Jasper, tell me one more. Go ahead.
Kathy asks, my daughter died in a car crash. Everyone I hear or see, or I see one, it hits me hard. I get that depressed feeling. How do I get out of my own way? So,
Kathy, you may not get out of your own way. What happens is each time you see somebody die or hear of a child lose in a car crash, it re-triggers your trauma. So what happens is the pain subsides, but the whole remains the same because you now remember what you went through in order to lose somebody, and now you're about to witness another family member go through that. So in these instances, those don't go away. But what I have learned is when people have gone through extreme trauma, they need temporary help, whether it's medication or therapy or whatever it may be, in order to get them through the dark times. If you're sitting in a dark spot, don't sit there. You don't have to, guys. There's plenty of help out there. If you're addicted to a substance, don't be afraid to ask for help for treatment because, again, you're not in control of any of this. I thank you all. I'll see you next Thursday, hopefully with a much more upbeat topic. But I did want to make myself vulnerable to you all because I sit up here every Thursday night and people just assume that I didn't go through X, Y, and Z. But I have gone through many of them and overcome them. But with the help of important people in my life, I did not do this alone. Understand that. I had a lot of people behind me. I had a lot of people that love me. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you next Thursday. Again, if you notice something, say something. If you see somebody that needs help, don't be afraid to ask them out. Don't be afraid to ask for a cup of coffee. And don't be afraid to just smile and say hi no matter what it is. Because you do not know if that person is in chronic pain, if that person is suffering horribly, if that person just buried their child or whatever. And the other thing I want to say too, for people that lose their spouses, they get a short amount of time off of work or child or whatever it is. They got to go back to work. So a couple of months go by, people assume that somebody's better. You can't wash away 18, 25, 50 years, whatever, in a year. It takes time for these things to happen. I'll see you all next Thursday. If anybody needs me, again, you can go to philquinn.com. You can schedule your reading right there online. My calendar is available for everyone to know what I have available. And then the new dates should be posted either tomorrow or the next day where you can buy your seat. I love you all, and I'll see you next Thursday. Thanks so much.